Brian Lehrer on WNYC. We mentioned yesterday that during the membership drive, one of the things we're doing is follow-up segments around 11:20 most days, on some of those short end-of-show segments we often do that I admit sometimes come out too short. Well, as it happened, one of those was just yesterday in our end-of-show series that we're calling Spring Cleaning, a series about organizing your stuff. That segment was about paperwork, both the physical paperwork, documents stuffed in filing cabinets, desk drawers, kitchen piles, and the digital files now scattered across your laptops and desktops and phones and in the cloud, photos, documents, everything. Because even in an increasingly paperless world, there are still certain things that you probably need to keep and certain things that you would really like to clean out, even digitally. So, you know what we're going to do? We're going to come right back to what we did too short yesterday and do it a little longer right now, as we are joined again by Kaitlyn Wells, senior reporter at the New York Times product review website Wirecutter, who has some practical tips for getting your documents, physical and digital, under control. Hey, Kaitlyn, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
And listeners, one thing we didn't get to do yesterday that we can do now is take your questions for Kaitlyn about this aspect of spring cleaning. 212-433-WNYC, because we were starting to get calls and texts about it yesterday when time ran out. 212-433-9692. You really touched a chord with this one, by the way, Kaitlyn. People are like, and especially the digital, I think. That was the response that I was seeing. Like, okay, people sort of know how to clean out their physical file cabinets, but the stuff on the web, in the cloud, just keeps piling up and piling up and piling up and piling up. And I guess the choices are you either pay Apple or Google or whoever it is more of a fee each year for the extra storage, or you have to figure out how to sort through this stuff, right?
Yeah, you really do. It's a complicated task, but I'm glad that we're able to address it today for your listeners.
So let's see. Where should we dig back in? How about security? Like, what's the safest way to store sensitive digital documents? Things like tax forms, scans of IDs, insurance paperwork, financial records. How do you do that when you're storing a lot of this stuff in the cloud? And, it's not like you're sharing it intentionally, but I guess it's there if you get hacked.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's there if you get hacked. But most people aren't going to go on, your cloud to try to find your passport information or your social security card, thankfully. But when it comes to organizing those items, you want to do it just like everything else to start. You want to clearly label everything, and then save it in an easily accessible format. But when it comes to those sensitive pieces of paperwork, I always like to password protect mine and lock it in a vault. Something like LastPass can really help with that, where if you just need to save like your social security number, your EIN for tax purposes, or even just your account information for your health insurance card. There are fields in a service like LastPass that can, securely save it, and then you can only access it with your individual password, and nobody else can get it.
And listeners, if you have questions for Kaitlyn on this, 212-433-WNYC. And to be clear, that's not our Pledge Drive phone number. We will never ask you for money on the air. This is our call-in line, 212-433-WNYC. WNYC 212-433-9692 on organizing your what we call paperwork, physical paperwork or the digital paperwork, all that stuff on your phones. 212-433-WNYC if you have a question or a comment about this or a tip for how you do it, 212-433-9692. I want to come back to something we touched on briefly yesterday, which was ways to organize the photos that we have in the cloud, because people now have, often tens of thousands of images literally sitting on their phones and cloud accounts. How do you even start to go through it? Because, I know people want to do that, but they think, oh, geez, where do I even start?
Yeah, definitely. Something you can do if it's on the cloud, especially nowadays, the photo services, they have a system where you can search for them or just sort them by location, by month, time of year. And that's a really easy way to kind of go through them in batches. So you're not feeling too overwhelmed and you can delete the ones that you don't need and organize the ones you want to keep. And once you've identified the ones you want to keep, the best way to go about preserving those files would be labeling them similar to documents when it comes to like renaming them with the date, location, and tag information that we discussed yesterday.
And, I've noticed that these days, at least on iCloud, which is what I use, you can search a file of even thousands of photos, I imagine, by looking for a word that might appear. I know there's not often, actual printed words in photos, but sometimes there are. And if you search for a word that might appear, that'll bring up a whole block of photos. If you put in somebody's face, or once you have somebody's face, you can label it with a name. And then, I want to see all the photos with Arthur in it. And then you'll get all the photos with Arthur. Things like that, right? You can organize like that around your photos. That's one tool for sorting them.
Yes, precisely. And that's what's really great about the technology that we have nowadays. You don't even have to have the file structure in place beforehand. It can just search it for you after the fact. And another option that I like is actually called an app swipe, where you can go through it and it'll just show you the photos that you took for one day, in your camera roll's history, and you can swipe left or right to, tackle those selection of photos really quickly.
Yeah, well, that's the way they display as a default, right? Is chronologically.
Yeah, they display the default as chronologically and also by like location. You can change the setup that way. But what's really interesting about it is if you like pinch on your phone itself rather than on the desktop, you can see just a massive collection, kind of like a mosaic of all of your images. So you'll start to suspect themes in there, and then you can go back in and kind of determine, oh, I really don't need, all 72 pictures I took of my dog that one Sunday,
Oh,
3 years
yeah.
ago.
Oh, yeah, that's really good. That's a really good tip. I hadn't thought of that, but I know that feature that you're talking about. You'll see a lot of the photos in your on your cloud or wherever you're storing them displayed really small, and then you can use that to start sorting. So you mentioned by place. I guess that's another way. So maybe there's someplace you go on vacation every year, and you say, okay, once you get one of those, you can label it Long Lake in the Adirondacks, and then search for all the photos that appear to be from Long Lake. Things like that, right?
Correct.
Um, we have a photo organization tip coming from Stacy in Fanwood. Stacy, you're on WNYC. Hello.
Hi, Brian, longtime listener. Thanks for taking my call. I was on Reddit once searching for a way to keep my photos organized because my iCloud is running out of storage that's synced to my laptop and nothing's working. Reddit had a cool tip of creating a shortcut on your phone to pull up photos one day at a time. So if we look at the photos, all the photos I've ever taken on May 14th, I can pull that up and find them that way. I'm not savvy enough to figure out the shortcut like the Redditors suggested, so every day I try to just search using that awesome search function on my iPhone, search for today's date, and then it becomes a lot easier to delete those 72 photos I took of my dog 4 years ago.
Good one, Stacy. Thank you very much. Did you know about that one, Kaitlyn, at Wirecutter?
Yes, I am familiar with that one. Me personally, I have way too many apps on my phone, so I don't need another shortcut on there, but I will go into the search function of my native photo app and it'll give you the option. Like if I type in a month, it'll give me the month, the day, or I can even specify by the year if I wanted to.
This was not the segment where we expected to get a lot of dissent, Kaitlyn, but we do have one, a text that has come in that says, excuse you. It really means excuse me, but they wrote, excuse you. I most definitely need those 72 photos of my dog I took last Saturday. So just saying. Going back to the papers, the physical papers, listener writes, we now have 6 banker's boxes full of old financial/tax paperwork that needs shredding and defied any home type page by page shredder. What can we do? Do you have shredding advice?
Shredding advice. Actually, I just tested a bunch of shredders for Wirecutter within the last couple
Huh.
of weeks. And there are shredders that will do high volume shredding for you, where you can insert like up to 100 of sheets at a time and then just let it run it on its own. And it'll shred those into tiny bits within 5 to 10 minutes for you. One shredder we do really like is the Aurora AU 120 MA. It's about 150 bucks. It works well. You can run it for about 20 minutes at a time. And it's been reliable for us for the past several years.
That's interesting. What there are shredders, and to this listener, who also wrote, there are no public shredding events coming up in New York City in the short term that they see. I wonder if that's right. I know that they've had them, these shredding trucks come around, and I've used them several times when they've come to my neighborhood. So maybe there is one coming up. You don't happen to know where we can find a list of shredding events, do you?
I do not have the site committed to memory yet, but I know that we can do this through the city's. I think 311 might have
Yeah,
something on there.
yeah.
Yeah.
To that listener, call 311, and maybe they will have that pretty easily. Also, some of the, what do you call them, like mailing service stores will do shredding. Like I think the UPS store near me will do shredding, I guess for a fee. I don't know if the FedEx storefronts as well. And, people might be concerned about giving things like documents, like the listener was writing about, to a store and say, okay, we trust you not to take down any information of mine because we know you're not going to put it in a shredder in front of me. But I don't know if you've looked into that, or if they do. I've never done that. If they do it in front of you, but you can walk your papers for shredding into places like that, right?
You can walk your places into shredding. Something else that I think is an often forget about service is through your public library. You'll be surprised by how many of them offer that
Oh,
secure shredding as well. You can get like up to 20 free prints at a time, like if you need to like print something out. But several of them do have a shredding service too, so it's worth, researching that.
oh, and this one is sparking a bunch of comments. Listener writes, my bank shreds documents for free. Another listener writes, my community board 6 in Queens is doing a shredding event soon. Another one, my county in New Jersey, Union County, has free mesh shredding events every few months. You just bring even a large bag of stuff and you can watch it go. Listener writes separately, I'm essentially computer illiterate. I just trash everything, both digital and paper. I'm overwhelmed. Most of what your guest is talking about goes right over my head, writes Brian in Rockland, Maine. So I think there's a question in there, which is kind of how to start, and especially for somebody like that who says they're computer illiterate.
I don't think anyone's truly computer illiterate, but I do understand it can be overwhelming. We all are capable of doing this. You just need somebody to show you how, and you just need a little patience and time. So for that listener, it's like, I know you can do this. You just need to sit down, give yourself 15 to 20 minutes, take a stack of those papers or just one folder on your desktop and go through it. That's all you need, just a little bit of time. There are great tutorials online if you need some help, going through and figuring out how to label things. But it's pretty simple. All you need to do is like right click on a file and you're able to, adjust the settings quite easily.
Daniel in Manhasset, you're on WNYC. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, how are you? Yeah, the callers have been what you've been talking about in terms of cloud storage. You can host a local storage in your own house, which is accessible just like you access the cloud. You would access it the same way, but it's hosted locally, and you're not spending the money on the iCloud when you can buy a one-time device. Usually, the devices are called a NAS. Synology makes a good product. You do have to be somewhat IT literate, but the technology has gotten so much better that it's really seamless almost. And there's aside from hosting your own data, you can do other things with a cloud network hosted internally in your home. It takes a little work, but you'll see the benefits, and especially you won't have to pay the fees to Apple.
Is that different from or better than, in your opinion, if you have an opinion, Daniel, than a thumb drive or even a few thumb drives, if that's what it takes to have enough storage space? Because they're really little, right? And you can back up stuff on there.
Right. What happens with a NAS is that you have redundancy built in. With a thumb drive, it can break, if it's a flash drive device. But with a NAS or this network access device, you have multiple drives, and the storage is cheaper now, and the technology is better and cheaper. So with that, you'll have redundancy built in amongst other benefits as you learn to use it and host services for your own home, like a media center. You can put music on there. You can put movies. So there's a lot of things you can do with one.
Cool, Daniel. Thank you very much. You aware of that? Is that a device or a system Kaitlyn?
Yes, I am. For the caller who feels like something like that is overwhelming, there is another solution that I would recommend. But I can tell you that a NAS system that I really like is by Synology. So if anybody's curious about learning more about that, that's a good company that Wirecutter likes, who makes them reliable NAS devices. As for alternative storage methods, you can use iDrive, like a portable hard drive, if you wanted to. So it gets it off your phone, gets it off your native desktop, or you can use a digital cloud service as well. iDrive is one that we really like. What's different about a separate cloud drive is that you can save up to 30 days worth of, or 30 versions of each file that you just back up indefinitely for just a few dollars a month. It comes with 5 terabytes of storage. And what I like about this is because you'll always have access to it. Unlike, say, you're cleaning out the photo app on your phone or the documents, drive on your computer. And if you delete it there, then it's off the cloud forever because you're, automatically syncing it. So if you want to avoid accidentally deleting those 72 photos of your dog, you want to get a separate cloud, a NAS, or an iDrive.
Listener writes, I wouldn't advise everyone to get a home cloud without proper security knowledge. These can be hacked with ransomware if they're connected to the internet. And that text goes on a little bit. So many people are chiming in still with their local shredding events coming up. One in Riverdale at 235th Street and Johnson Avenue. Another one says on Friday, June 5th, behind Borough Hall in Brooklyn, there will be a shredding event that is free, walk-up only, Friday, June 5th, behind Borough Hall in Brooklyn. So those are still coming in. And that's going to wrap up this segment. But remember I told you folks at the beginning that this was a follow-up on yesterday's end of show spring cleaning segment with Kaitlyn Wells from Wirecutter because it was too short. Well, we have today's spring cleaning segment with Kaitlyn coming up as our next segment, and that's going to be on memorabilia. So, Kaitlyn, talk to you in a few. Thanks for following up on yesterday.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
Brian Lehrer on WNYC. All right, back to Kaitlyn Wells, senior staff writer at Wirecutter, as we continue our end of the show each day during the membership drive spring cleaning series about organizing your stuff and your life. We're doing this on 6 different ways over 6 different days. We just got through part 2 of organizing important documents because that was too short yesterday. Today it's going to be about organizing and sometimes digitizing memorabilia. And by that, I mostly mean stuff from your family. Things left behind by parents, grandparents, even great grandparents that feel important to save, even if it's always not always clear how to preserve them or even where to begin. So, Kaitlyn, thank you. Ongoing thanks as we continue this series. Hi.
Hello.
And listeners, does anybody have a question for Kaitlyn about saving what you might call family heirlooms, especially if there are a lot of them and you kind of get overwhelmed by them? 212-433-WNYC, 212-433-9692. You have a Viola Davis quote in your article. You want to start there?
Yeah. So basically, Viola Davis took part in an interview with author Brene Brown. And what she talked about was when her father was on his deathbed, he shared that he hated his life's work as a racehorse groomer and a janitor. And he kept that secret. And she was really moved by that and felt basically that there's an unspoken message that the only stories worth telling are the stories that end up in history books. This is not true, she said. She said, everyone matters. My father's story matters. We are all worthy of telling our stories and having them heard. We all need to be seen and honored in the same way that we all need to breathe. And that's something that's really stuck with me, and it's something that I've been trying to do over the past year, is preserving my history and the history of my family members as well. And in that process, I've, discovered a lot of tips. It's complicated. It's not an easy undertaking, but I think it's going to be well worth it when you're able to preserve the legacy of the ones that mean the most to you.
Well, it seems to me there are 2 different categories here, and I don't know if you get into both. One, in a way, the easier one is the family photos or documents that get handed down. I know I was just recently looking at my grandmother's naturalization papers, which I didn't even know that my parents still had. But there it is, and I photographed it so I can save it digitally if anything happens to that very old document. But I think that's the easy part. What about other physical objects that are family heirlooms? And you think, oh my God, how can I get rid of this? But, like once the parents are gone, let's say, and you're cleaning out their house or apartment, you can't keep all their stuff.
Yeah, you can't keep all the stuff, but honestly, there's going to be a lot of items you want to keep just because the original version is the highest quality you're ever going to have access to. So items like, naturalization paperwork, sure, yeah, go ahead and photograph those or scan them in a flatbed scanner and save them. But say if you have an old photo album with pictures, those types of items, you're going to want to keep the originals and put them in storage.
I think we have a question coming in. Is Harriet ready here? Okay, I'll go to her in a minute. That line isn't ready. A lot of people have inherited boxes of photos, tapes, and formats that we don't have the players for anymore, or other kinds of family objects. When you first open those boxes, is there a best place to start?
When you first open those boxes, you want to treat it like any organization method when you get started. You want to set it out, assess what you have, and determine what you want to do with it. You also want to make sure it's organized in a way that makes sense to you, but preserves the original format if you just, because you do want to hold on to it in case you're able to digitize it in a new format later on.
Go ahead. So I finished the thought.
No, something that's surprising for people is when it comes to labeling those items, you actually want to use a graphite pencil instead of a pen, because graphite isn't going to fade and it's not going to bleed through and damage the original artifact.
Harriet in Pine Brook, New Jersey, you're on WNYC. Hi, Harriet.
Hi. I have a different kind of a question. I am the person who would be the grandmother or the mother who would be leaving the stuff. And my children are not at all interested, nor are my grandchildren, in any of my stuff. They haven't expressed any interest. My niece was always asking if she should digitize things for me, my photos or papers. And I say to her, well, what's the point? So I guess as the person who will be leaving the stuff, I want to know what you advise and how much time does it take? And third, is there a place that I could go, and how much would it cost to spend the time to go through all my stuff with such a person to leave it that it could be of value maybe to a historical society or to anybody? Or should I just tell them to go ahead, and I don't even have to tell them when I die, they'll just throw everything away?
It's I'm so glad you called, because we've been taking this from the perspective of the people who inherit this stuff. So what about to Harriet and others in her position, or, of course, potentially, we're all potentially someday in that position?
Yeah, first I want to say that, I'm really sorry to hear that your family isn't too interested in, preserving what you have to share with them. That can be really hard to come to terms with, but I totally get it. Sometimes we just have too much stuff that we've accumulated. But I do think your instinct is right. You want to contact a local historical society and see if any of the documents and images that you have are of public interest. Like, you might have photos of like an old town square when you were a child that they might want to hold on to. You never know. So it's worth reaching out to them to kind of like assess what you have. You can also contact the American Institute for Conservation. They have a database of reputable experts who can kind of help you figure out what to do with those items as well. And you can even go to them where they'll preserve it for you.
Harriet, I hope that's helpful. And, from the kind of the other side of that, in a certain sense, I've seen articles advising people who have elderly parents on how to convince the parents to go through their stuff before they pass away. So it's a difficult, and I know in your article about this, you've got various psychological complications. Certainly the grief, the nostalgia, that are other psychological aspects here. But last few seconds, these can be tough things, right?
They really can be. And I just want to give a plug for therapy in this case. It's perfectly acceptable, when you're processing your family memories and kind of, coming terms to end of life decisions, to have that conversation with a trusted professional, because we don't want to bog down our family members all of the time.
Kaitlyn Wells, senior staff writer at the New York Times product review website Wirecutter. We've had her on the show these last 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, and today, to help out with this special pledge drive series we're doing about spring cleaning. Kaitlyn, it's been great speaking with you this week, and I can tell from all the texts and calls that have come in that you've really given out some good advice. So thanks for coming on WNYC for this.
Thank you for having me, and I hope I really was a help to your listeners.
WNYC's journalism and storytelling is heard by millions of passionate listeners. Sponsors of our programming gain our listeners' attention and their respect. Learn about how your organization can support WNYC and WNYC Studios at sponsorship.wnyc.org.